everyone. Welcome to Hungover Podcast. This week, we're going to delve into something that is critical for our time and has been quite shocking to me personally. I don't know about you, Julien, but we're going to get real hard-hitting news this week as it's important to all of our lives.
At least the American viewers and listeners, anyways.
Well, yeah, when there's no middle class in America to do anything and the American economy fails and we have to rely on everybody else to give us credit, then it'll affect everybody too. So
yes, but that'll be like at least a year from now. Come on.
6 months at the most. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Yvonne. Over there,
Julian, welcome to the podcast, guys. I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now.
Semi-pessimistic opening from me. Julian, optimistic as always. And we're going to get in today to the tax bill proposed by GOP representatives and supported by Mr. President Donald Trump himself. And we're going to get into how the election of Doug Jones might affect it, the different things going into the tax bill, how the connected bills, which were put together kind of today in an afternoon meeting on Wednesday the 13th, how they came together and what that means for us. Yeah, it's a heavy topic, Julian. Yeah,
it's, we had a shorter podcast last week. I think we're gonna talk, or at least you're gonna talk for a while. I think you have many opinions on this bill. I did read the first couple pages of the bill. I think.
Nice.
Maybe I found something else. I almost fell asleep doing it. Those things are really dense, and it looks. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it looks so stupid. Just how they format it, and it looks like they typed it out on a typewriter or something, which is possibly true. I don't know. But yeah, anyways, Yvonne, we start our podcast out. Well, also, you can check this podcast out on iTunes and SoundCloud, and would be very helpful to us if you wrote us an iTunes review, because it helps a lot with our visibility, and maybe we'll get more than 24 subscribers that way. That would be awesome. But yeah, Yvonne, we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what media have you been consuming this week, and what did you drink, if anything at all, this week?
So this weekend, I went to another little brewery in Pennsylvania, and I got a little flight packet that they have there. So it had 4 different 4 ounces.
Man, you were getting all the flights.
I know, man. But this time, better prices.
One of those guys. Better prices, good.
Yes.
Gotta save money somewhere.
Much better prices. So in the flight, taxes. I had an IPA, a cranberry tart, a Pilsner, and I think another IPA. Anyway, one of the IPAs I tried out, I ended up buying a big can of. It's called a Crowler. It's basically like, you know those huge Foster's cans?
Yeah,
they
those
look like
are
mini kegs. It's basically that size of beer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's that size of like a 7.9 ABV brew.
Okay, wow.
Pretty tough.
So just completely blasted after shotgunning one of those. Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
That would be severely irresponsible. So we went to this brewery. There was a festival in the city in which it's in. It was a winter fest, so they had a lot of different activities. One of them was this beer tour. So we got to go into the brewery, try out some of their brews, and we had a beer tour, which is a really cool process at this one because it's so small. It's basically everything happens in one room, which is kind of like the giant warehouse part of their building.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see all the processes, and it was one of the times when you get to be a lot closer. Like, I like those intimate brewing tours because you get to see all the machinery up close.
Oh, cool. Well, if you ever visit again, I'll take you to a cool tour. I'll take you on a cool tour of a distillery. There's one in, of course, the hippest part of Brooklyn, Red Hook. But they make chocolate there too, so it's also awesome.
Oh, cool.
I'll take you on a tour there. It's pretty
nice.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
maybe we can make a video if they let us.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
So the cranberry tart was also pretty good. It's not chocolate, but it was pretty good as a beer goes.
Nice.
And it was indeed tarty and semi-sweet, so it was pretty good in general.
In the way that you would want it to be tarty, or too much?
I could have dealt with a little bit more, like more of a sour, sour style than what it was. But
how do they make it so sour? Oh my God.
That's a great question.
Sour beers. I need to look that up.
Yeah, we should look that up. Anyway, on the beer tour, I got to flex my chemistry muscles.
Nice. You're one of those assholes, like, oh, I know more chemistry than you, Mr. Tour Guide. Fuck you.
No, I wasn't that asshole, but I knew more chemistry than anybody else on the tour. Which is cool. Kind of surprising.
What did you...
just the byproducts of yeast and what yeast needs to grow. For instance, putting oxygen in and the byproducts of yeast eating sugar.
It's a lot of sugar.
Yeah, it's
yeast
a lot of sugar.
Obese children in America. Too much sugar. Yeah.
They're budding prospects, though.
Yes. Am I right, or am I right?
That's a chemistry biology joke there. Anyway, going forward, some things that I've watched this week. Did I talk about American Vandal last week?
No, you did not. Or I don't remember you talking about this.
So I've been on this kick of watching all of these, I've listened to Serial. I've watched this series called Confession Tapes, which is about people who confess to crimes that they didn't actually do due to the rigors of interrogation stuff. I like that kind of real world investigation. Mindhunter is another show, which is kind of like breaking down psychology of criminality. But American Vandal is a mockumentary style short series, which is kind of funny, and it's a Netflix show. And it follows a fictional high school in which a student is expelled because he drew 27 dicks on all of the teachers' cars. And it goes through a series. It's just like Serial or any investigative show. It's
Dick jokes never get old.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They go through step by step, like recreating the timeline, doing different things like, oh, he drew the head differently, and there are no ball hairs on this dick. It's a lot of really crude and also a lot of really funny jokes, and I like how it plays with the series, the format of the Serial style thing, making a murderer also. So it's like that, but humorous and doesn't have to deal with somebody but getting murdered.
Nice.
That was pretty funny. I highly recommend that. And the main kid who gets accused of the crime is a tremendous actor with an amazing voice. It's like so deep. And he plays this stoner kid so well. It's pretty top notch.
Top. That's awesome.
I also checked out another series on HBO. Which I binged through. It's called High Maintenance. It's an expansion of a web series made by a husband and wife team. Katya, somebody, and Ben Sinclair. Katya, I don't remember her last name. It's complicated. It's like Blanchfield or something like that. Anyway, very good series in which I think you'd like it, actually. Because it's basically New York City is another character within the show. And it goes through a bunch of different New York stories. So the basic idea is that the main character, the dude, is he's a bike riding weed dealer. So you ring him up, he comes to deliver weed to you. And the episodes are based on the intersectionality of things that he's doing in another story that runs concurrently. And he's the only character so far that really repeats.
Oh, so that's awesome.
It's two storylines, because there's one with the dude and there's one with somebody else. And they don't usually intersect too much. So it's two separate storylines that are always examining something interesting about the modern life of New York City.
I'm definitely into short stories told in movie settings or in movies in general. That's why I like Pulp Fiction so much and Reservoir Dogs. I thought those were brilliantly crafted, obviously.
Look at that Tarantino stuff.
Tarantino, great stuff. But I also like, I think it's really, when it's done right, which I can't say many people do, this type of storytelling where you have interweaving storylines that pass through each other at one point, and then I just always like that aha moment when you realize, oh, they just intersected or whatever, and things like that. So I think I should probably see the movie Looper, but I haven't seen it.
It's pretty good.
Feel like
I
that's
enjoyed
what it's
Looper.
about.
I watched it
Cool.
A few years ago during a holiday. It was good.
Awesome. Was the makeup good on JGL?
Yeah, it was actually really good.
Awesome.
Surprisingly, I didn't expect it to be, but it worked well enough within the scope of the movie.
That's awesome.
But I really recommend we should check out High Maintenance, perhaps when we get together this weekend.
But it's on HBO, right?
Yeah, it's on HBO.
Yeah, cool. We can. I'll definitely watch an episode or two. I'm into it. Couple beers, relaxing.
Yeah, man.
You know, the boys are back in town.
The boys are back in town.
Don't sing too much of that song. We'll get copyright strikes.
Yes, I nailed it perfectly. How about you, Julien?
Well, I had a pretty New York experience on Saturday. Of course, Saturday was, I don't know if you knew, maybe it's different in every city, but it was SantaCon in New York City.
Oh, there was a SantaCon in Buffalo.
Oh, okay. There was none in Syracuse?
I don't know. My friend snapped pictures in Buffalo. I wasn't in Syracuse this weekend, so I didn't see.
Oh, good point. I forgot. Yeah, so everyone, all these, surprisingly, it was snowing also in New York City. And like just a bunch of people in Santa costumes, obviously, but clearly the women didn't get the memo. Or a lot of them, that I was standing on a block waiting for my friend for a long time. This is not really related. I'm just talking about the general SantaCon people. But yeah, every woman that passed by, basically, they're like, "Oh, where's the next bar? Oh my god!" And they were all complaining about how cold it was, and clearly it's your fault. You aren't wearing a fucking jacket.
This is an American thing. I swear to God, it's an American
complaining
thing.
About cold?
To not wear enough clothes.
Oh, not wear it. Oh, in general.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is.
I know, because my parents always told me to bundle up way more than I wanted to, because all of my friends never wore any cold weather gear.
And they all got sick.
Because they all wanted to look cool, because apparently wearing coats isn't cool.
My mom always made me like a mountain of, like a snowball, but mostly down feather.
Like a Christmas story?
Yeah, whatever. Just a puff jacket, just a mess. As you can tell, I don't get the girls that way. You know what I mean? That these girls that I'm talking about that don't wear any jackets in sub-freezing temperatures. But yeah, anyways, aside from that, I hung out with my friend, and we went to go to we were in the Lower East Side, and we went to a tea bar. It was like a Japanese tea bar, basically. It was run by
alcoholic tea?
No, it's just tea. We just had tea for about an hour and a half, I think. It's ridiculous. I saw on the menu, most of the tea that you get are like $10. So I was thinking, oh God, what did he get me into? He was trying to get the tea for free because he knew the owner, but the owner wasn't there, so we couldn't get the tea for free. But we ended up getting, $10 for tea. It was really good tea. I had an oolong tea, but they basically steep the tea and keep refilling the pot for as long as you want, pretty much, or as long as the tea will go, the amount of tea that you paid for. So I'd say maybe not worth $10 because it's tea, but I did have tea for an hour and a half, and that was pretty cool. And we sort of, it was Saturday, we were hanging out, talking about catching up on life. It was a lot of fun. And then he took me to his other friends. Were having a 1-year anniversary party for their store, which is called Snow Peak. You can check it out. It's another Japanese style store, I guess. The store is they sell like hiking gear and really cool Japanese style stuff in terms of their fashion. So they sell like jackets and flannels and all the things that you need to hike. And so that was really cool. We got beer from this. We supplied the party with beer. It was Narragansett and Busch Light. We got the Busch Light because it worked with the theme. The cans had mountains on them, and we were taken to a mountain store. And also it was cheap. Look, the guy who was buying it, we were just helping move it, but the guy who was buying it did not have the company card, and he had, I think, $70 in his bank account, and he had to get beer for a lot of people. But we also had...
That's rough.
But we also had Soto is a sake, super premium Junmai Daijinjo sake. Looks pretty cool. You can see it on my phone, maybe. But yeah, it was a pretty relaxing event. You know, a bunch of hip New York people that like clothing were there. I didn't know any of them, but they were. And then it was cool because they had a whole turntable set up with actual records and a really nice bunch of speakers. And they were playing, they weren't blasting music, which was awesome. They weren't blasting like really, I don't know, dance type music. They were just playing really relaxing, cool music that was on records. I don't know. It was just such a New York City thing that I almost hurt my head. I don't know. It was like, why am I here? I don't know what's going on. And then I went home and played Destiny 2 a lot.
Nice.
Of which I'm getting very frustrated with, particularly with the PvP. But they did just nerf the gun that everyone's using to oblivion. So now you barely can use it. I'm kind of pissed off at Bungie with this gun. But maybe it's for a different podcast. I don't know.
Well, at least they did something, right?
No, yeah. So, well, okay, I'll get into it. Basically, they released this incredibly overpowered gun, gave it to everyone, and all the PvP matches were just a laser show, which is, I mean, that's fun. It's cool, but it shouldn't be every single match. It would be cool if it was just a playlist where you can only use that gun and it's super overpowered. But they basically, their tweet was... that after this week's reset, the patch was that they basically said there's not enough time to balance this gun specifically how it should be, so we're just going to nerf it to oblivion until next year so we can properly play test it, which means that they never properly play tested a gun that you have to pay for. So for the DLC, is what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I'm very angry about. But whatever, it's Destiny 2, man. But the rest of I think the rest of the expansion is fine. Aside from that one gun, I think it's fine. I think it's worth getting because it's just more, if you like Destiny 2 a lot. It's just more Destiny 2. And they added in this cool thing called Masterworks. So you can get, basically you can get random roll perks on your gun. And you can re-roll them. So you can get a perk that you might particularly want on a certain gun. And also the Masterwork guns, they generate orbs of light for you if you get multi-kills with them, which is pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool addition.
That's a nice perk.
Yeah, so it's just something more to grind out and work on. But Vaughn, I think that's about it. And that's all I consume for the week. I think we can move on to the topic of the show. Vaughn, I think you should start us off with this because I don't even know where to begin.
What the fuck? I can't believe that the first examples of this goddamn tax bill passed. And
yes,
everybody, like McCain,
the House
was too scared. Why the hell did he vote for it? There are a couple other lawmakers that I thought had, common sense and the ability to discern things that were going to destroy the American middle class and not. And yet they voted on party lines. Thank God, which is a weird thing for me to say, but thank God for Bob Corker, who voted against it. And so now we have Doug Jones, who last night basically won the election in Alabama. We still have to get through some things that Roy Moore is probably going to attempt to do to block it in terms of recounting, etc. But he won.
Yes. The
Doug
official senator of Alabama, most likely, right?
Yeah.
It was a Senate race, right?
It was a Senate race, which brings the Senate to 49 Democrats and 51 Republicans.
Yes.
Which would mean that if Bob Corker sided with the Democrats again, it'd be 50-50. This thing wouldn't be able to be passed.
Right, because you need 2/3 of the Senate, right?
I think to pass this, you just need the majority.
You just need majority? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm wrong.
So 50% plus 1.
Okay. Well, perhaps we should start with outlining the bill, I guess, and what it means for our current tax season and the next couple years, should it be passed. I don't know if you
so today,
I think you understand more about it than I do. I'm very ignorant when it comes to taxes and economics and things like that.
So the tax bill that was originally produced it was one that was passed by the House, and there was a separate one that was passed by the Senate. They are both upwards of 500 pages, with amendments being slapped on at the last minute. Mm-hmm. Mitch McConnell got it through at 2 a.m., so that means that it's a great piece of legislation, because all good legislation gets passed in the wee hours without people being able to read it. And, with amendments being slapped on, such as an amendment being put in there that would allow for fetuses to receive benefits of estates.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's an initial thing for establishing personhood within the fetus, which would cancel out abortion.
Well, I know.
So this tax bill ranged from everything from attacking grad students to trying to make fetuses people to granting the biggest donor reprieve possible, right? What was the main goal of this thing? So Republican donors told Republican senators and representatives that they needed tax reprieve, and this was the time to get it. So they've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and this tax bill is designed in such a way to really affect the middle class and make the poor poorer, the rich richer. And
yes, of course.
It's going to squeeze out the middle class. So wealth
trickle
for the
down.
1% up here, wealth for the lower percent erased.
I mean, clearly trickle down is not going to work. I think Louis Black said it best. I just saw him on just clips of, I think it was Stephen Colbert, and he explained why trickle down doesn't work. He said, go drink 20 beers, then piss yourself, and then put a glass at your foot and see how long it takes to fill up that glass with your piss. And that explains trickle down in a nutshell.
Yeah,
but yeah, exactly right.
So the reason that today there had to be a bipartisan committee meeting to put the things together is because the House and the Senate passed two different bills. So the House bill, for instance, included things like screwing over grad students, and the Senate bill included repeals of other things. In general, they had to come together to put the thing together. So they put the thing together The deal the committee reached today, according to the New York Times, lower the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35%.
Okay.
It'll go into effect in 2018, and lower the top individual tax rate to 37% from 39.6%. And although that percentage seems small, the amount of wealth generated from that 2.6% is enormous. And why? Because it's the top 1%. And they're now in this structure, they're not even paying their fair share, I think. But as everything gets restructured, the fair share goes down even more significantly. Another reason why the Republicans are such great lawmakers is the Senate bill actually fucked their own donor scheme. So it fucked with the research and development credit, which many corporations use in order to be tax exempt in many different ways. Right. And so the Senate bill basically eliminated this tax credit, and the donors were like, what the fuck? You fucked it up. So they had to come together to bring these things together, and there will have to be a new vote in order to pass this new bill that was the put together in conference bill.
Okay. Well, let's see. They didn't they eliminate a tax bracket as well? I think, or in this bill. Maybe I'm reading it incorrectly.
How so?
Weren't there? Sorry, I need to find the page I found that.
Yeah,
on.
Me too. There's a lot to go through, so it's like it's difficult to.
Well, okay, so right, exactly. So look, I want to know. So you think that the rich are not paying their fair share, and by rich we mean people who are making over $250,000 a year?
No,
right?
I'm saying
$500,000.
I'm saying the 95th and over percentile. So that's 300,000 and over. The top
300,000.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the top 0.1%, their after tax income is going up by like 2 to 3 percentage points.
Okay.
By 2027, so in 2018, 2019, plus 2.5, things like that. So it's going to be enormous amounts of money.
Okay.
Like it seems like a small percentage change, but it's huge.
Okay. Well, I am sending you a link. I don't know. This is probably not a very good source, thebalance.com. But it looks, they just have it outlined that they're reducing tax brackets. It looks like there's a tax bracket for $60,000 to $170,000 a year income, and then $170,000 to $200,000 a year. If I ever made that much money, I'd be very happy. But it looks like they've combined those two, or no, there's currently a lot of tax brackets. There's 7. According to thebalance.com, again, this is probably not the most credible source, but it looks like they're reducing it to 4 tax brackets. So I'm not. I also don't entirely understand their.
That's the House version. The Senate version maintained the 7. I'm not positive on which was maintained, because the one that I'm looking at here on the New York Times, which is talking about the consolidated thing, doesn't explain whether the tax brackets maintained from 4 or 7.
This was technically updated today.
So is this New York Times thing.
Okay. So I mean, I don't know anything about tax brackets, but my understanding of taxes is that or at least my understanding of the income tax is that we all get taxed depending on how much money we make. We fit in certain tax brackets, and the government takes a certain percentage of that based off our income and just takes it from us, right? And that funds our taxes, basically. Or that's my understanding of it. Is that wrong? They take a percentage of our income.
Right.
Yes, that's the income tax. So,
and it's a graduated income tax, which means the more you make, the higher your taxes are.
Right.
But it's done that way because it would affect you. It's an attempt to affect people the same amount, no matter how much money you make. So, for instance, a person who makes $100 a month, if they're taxed at $100, they make $0 that month, right? Even though
of course.
that sounds like 100% of their income. Mm-hmm. But if a person who makes $3 million in a month is taxed the same $100, right, with a flat rate, for instance, then that would feel disproportionate. Or let's say 10%. So a person who makes $1 million a month, if you're taxed at 10%, that's $100,000, which sounds a lot, but you still have $900,000 at the end of the month.
Course,
that's a lot of money.
That's $900,000 more than I have.
Right.
So,
But a person who's taxed at 10% who earns $100 a month remains at $90, which is a lot less money in order to purchase things. Mm-hmm. And although you then might say, well, the person with $900,000 then invests in creating jobs and markets and different things. Yes, that's
the
a
whole
possibility.
Trickle-down theory.
That's the idea of trickle down, right? But it's not really working out the same way, especially when we think about wealth retention and how people do that, how investments or people who make a ton of money avoid paying a lot of tax on them through being able to hire lawyers and accountants and different things to prevent them from paying their fair share of taxes to begin with, etc., or creating tax havens, use of tax havens, things like that. For instance, Apple was headquartered in Ireland. The Irish people thought that they were paying American taxes. Americans were thinking they were paying Irish taxes. In result, Apple was paying zero taxes, basically. And they, at some point, had more cash than countries. Whole countries.
Yes. And they're going to be a $1 trillion company, right?
Right.
They're going to be.
That's a corporation. And this is also to reflect the tax bill is also going to affect corporations. So corporations will get an ease of tax benefits, etc., so that they can retain wealth and things like that. It's basically so people don't have to pay money to the government, so we don't have to fund things that the rich people don't want to fund, which is bullshit because everybody should fund everything equally as much as they can.
It's a democracy.
Yes, and it's this whole thing about how egregious the tax code is. America has the most, if not one of the most, if not the most complex tax codes in the world.
Yes,
and it's done so specifically because it's done piecemeal. It was done at the behest of different capitalist classes. Whoever was the elite at the time really wanted to make sure that they would be able to benefit. And as much as we've been trying to play catch up in order to get there, in order to say, okay, this isn't fair, this isn't okay, you have to pay taxes. For instance, Apple, you have to pay taxes. Well, they're playing a different kind of game and buying out more and more legislatures and different people to enact the tax reforms that would help benefit them. So you have an increasing amount of corporation influence in terms of tax structure, but you also have rich influence in terms of tax structure. Like single donors into campaigns like Sheldon Adelson, who is a major contributor to Republican campaigns, or the Koch brothers, are able to influence disproportionately to what you or I could do in terms of how much money is given. That's a result of Citizens United. Now, all of this goes into the idea that the rich people have always hated paying taxes because it's not fair. Now, this is not to say that all people hate that. For instance, Warren Buffett, he's like, I would pay more taxes if I could because I pay less taxes than my cleaning lady. Well, okay, thank you, Warren Buffett. But for the majority, especially if we're talking conservative donors, they want to pay less taxes. They want to be more involved in terms of making sure that happens, and so they're giving huge amounts. And that is why the Republican senators and representatives were so beholden to the donor class and making sure that all of these things benefited the richest percentages of people and richest percentages of corporations, and are attempting to squeeze out even small businesses and the middle class.
Just like Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, am I right? But so is this this seems to me, this what I've cursorily read about the tax plan seems to be in my view, what the Republican Party stands on in general, and has standed on for a long time. This is what I always think of when I think of a Republican. I always think of a rich white man that is just trying to become richer, and that's all. That's what they care about. They wanna make sure there are less taxes for rich people, and everyone else will figure out how to subsidize the rest of the taxes, so we don't have to worry about going into a tax deficit, for instance. So is it really a surprise to you that this tax plan, the surprise isn't that this tax plan exists, it's that it's possibly going to be passed right now, like next week?
Yeah.
That's the surprise, right? That it's possibly going to happen.
Well, the surprise to me initially was the fact that this plan would be passed at all, because the majority of even Republicans across this country don't want this tax plan.
Okay. So maybe I have a skewed view and have made a gross generalization about a political party.
But no, that's
yes.
not wrong, because what we're talking about is we're talking about perception of the tax bill and the people who are in power, right? So the voters have one idea, but the Republicans who are actually in seats of power and the donors which keep them there, they have totally different ideas. So the Democrats don't want this. As you can see, like the Senate, all the Democrats voted against it.
Yeah,
and
like Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, and we have had this real push against this bill. So the idea being that the Republicans are pushing hard, and Trump wants it, Mitch McConnell wants it, Paul Ryan wants it. These are the people who want it. It's all the Republican people, and because of their pressure that they're receiving from donors. And things like removing the independent mandate from Obamacare, which is kind of one of the central pieces to making sure that Obamacare succeeds. Yeah. These are Republican ideals which are being shoehorned into the tax bill.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you eliminate the individual mandate, it means that people don't have to join into healthcare. And so what that does is that reduces the amount of people buying into it, which makes the premiums go up, which makes it more likely that people won't want the healthcare system as it is, which means that you can break it apart, repeal Obamacare, and go back to corporate destruction of the American people and profiting on sickness.
Okay, right, of course.
Right.
So I heard an interesting, maybe... Okay, well, on the topic of healthcare, do you think that... Okay, so they want to basically just... sorry, I'm blanking here. They want to get rid of what particularly in this tax bill, the Obamacare tax... I'm forgetting the word. Sorry, maybe I'm thinking of something wrong. They want. I don't even know.
So it's so there is a punishment basically for not being bought into healthcare. It's the individual mandate. Yes. So the individual mandate means that you must be part of a healthcare system, or you will be charged a penalty for not being part of it.
Okay, and that comes out in taxes, right?
So that's part of this tax. Part of this tax bill is to repeal that. And in order so that people don't have to join into it. Now, although on the surface this might seem like that's better for poorer people who might be struggling to afford it, but that's not the point. The point is to lower premiums. To lower premiums, you have to have more people buy in. And you have to have a lot more youth buying in, because it's generally accepted that young people... buying in is better because young people don't have as many health problems as older people.
I see.
In order for... What is a premium? A premium is basically how much you have to pay into it in order to... based on what your income level is, etc., right? So the more people buying into health insurance, it pushes premiums down. The less people buying into it pushes premium up, right? It's that supply-demand curve. So it's going up and up and up. So the idea is to push people into the system. That's what the individual mandate does. It's also good for this healthcare system in general because people who have insurance and get taken care of have insurance and we don't have to pay for them. People who don't have insurance and they get taken care of, we have to individually pay for. Right? So it's either the healthcare system pays for that, whatever their insurance provider is, or we as taxpayers will be paying for uninsured people to get healthcare in general. So there's a lot of discrepancy in that. Now, where does the big difference come in? Rich people who have to pay higher premiums don't necessarily want that. Or people who are in the healthcare industry, insurance providers, don't want people buying in to the system because they're not allowed to maneuver or manipulate the system in a way that benefits them. For instance, pre-existing conditions are allowed through the Obamacare system, right? So if you have a pre-existing condition, insurance companies cannot deny you for receiving insurance. That means that, so previously, if you had something like asthma or something that is more severe and you weren't on healthcare but you needed to get on healthcare, for instance, if you're a young person, get into an accident and you finally need healthcare for the first time in your life, the fact that you weren't on healthcare when you had your injury or something meant that it was harder to get on healthcare in general. And that made costs skyrocket, right? So think about any kind of doctor's visit without insurance. You're paying hundreds of dollars for supplies and things.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. So you have to have health insurance in order to pay for that. Or if you don't have health insurance and you can't pay for it, guess who foots the bill? It's not like nobody's going to pay for that. It's going to be other people paying through taxes to the government that pays down those debts. So in general, there's this whole discrepancy because insurance companies don't want to pay for people. That's not how they make money. They make money by people buying into it without doing anything. But the system that is at the moment doesn't benefit them the way that other things would. So that's why they want to reduce people buying into it, which is why the terms for affordable healthcare were reduced. They were cut in half, which means that people didn't have enough time to get into the market. By the way, the 15th is the last day. I know this podcast is coming out after that, but make sure that if you didn't, you got signed up. Oh, well. Anyway, in any case, it's really important that we understand the implications of all of these things within the tax bill, and thank God they're going to maintain the fact that like grad students the tuition remission for grad students is tax exempt, things that directly affect us.
Yeah. So, so the government takes, I don't know how much money right now in a year, right? So they take a certain amount of money from everyone and from all corporations and for all those things, right? So they have a certain amount of money that they're making and then using to fund our army, NASA, etc., public things. Is the government going to be making the same amount of money after all these tax cuts?
No,
for
within
the rich?
10 years,
and then
the estimates based on what the bill was, after people did some analysis on it, the estimate was that it would increase the deficit by $1.5 trillion or something like that.
All right.
That's trillion with a T.
Yes, of
that's
course.
As much as a war
to...
for 10 years.
And then we're going to have to, then maybe a country like China will buy up some of that debt, right? And even though we already have a lot of debt with China, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Is that how this works?
So
in layman's terms.
So this is a more delicate idea. So in order to balance that out, you'd have to have people buying into the American Treasury because the American Treasury is a solid long-term benefit. So, for instance, in 2008, why we had the financial crisis is because countries like China were taking a lot of the debt. Basically, they're buying the debt. And in that way, they made credit very accessible and very cheap. So they're investing into the American Treasury and different things. So the credit was very cheap. because of that investment, and that meant that you didn't have a lot of scrutiny on how deals were given out. For instance, you have those exorbitant loan rates that were given out for people who could never pay them down to buy houses. They're all lumped into bundles and then sold and sold and sold and sold until nobody recognizes what are in these bubbles. Nobody has the epistemological ideology to understand that if the housing market takes a stumble or goes down, that everything falls apart because everybody says, well, always through history, housing has gone up, and it's impossible for housing to go down based on the market as it is and how it always has been. And guess what? When the market goes down, everything crumbles because you've got people defaulting on things, people can't pay back things, and there's no market. It's all built on a house of cards. And then you have people who are like in the Big Short, people who are like strippers who own 3 houses and are flipping them, but they're not really able to afford it all, you know?
Yeah.
So essentially you have other countries buying up our debt. We're generating tons and tons and tons of debt. And the people who are supposed to be looking out for our children to, you know, not have to pay for the debt that we have, the Republicans who always say...
Through taxes, right? You mean?
The Republicans are, yeah, basically. So the Republicans are always like, we're passing on the buck to our children. They're going to never be able to pay down the deficit as it is. Meanwhile, there's tons of trouble with that logic, etc. But in general, the people who always said that when it was a democratic idea are going to do the exact same thing, except for instead of government spending in order to increase public welfare or public goods, it's government spending by way of tax cuts to the people who are so rich that they don't need those tax cuts.
Okay.
A tax cut is basically a way of spending, but without doing it without the government spending it, right? So the idea is that people who receive that tax cut will then spend and reinvigorate the market, but that's never worked. Since the 80s, we've seen crash after crash after crash, an exorbitant amount of money spent on fucking bullshit, including cocaine and every single exorbitance in the world. But how much has it benefited inner city schools? How much of it has benefited the roads and infrastructure that we have? And how much of it has benefited the infrastructure that we have in terms of like energy production or different things? So it's a remarkably stupid way of looking at an investment, and a remarkably prevalent way that the only people who benefit from it are the donors who have the Republicans with a vice grip.
Okay, so clearly you don't like this Republican tax plan.
I don't like the Republican Party as constituted.
Okay, that's fine. But
it's just the fact that we have, well, the Freedom Caucus is a bunch of idiots who don't actually know how government works, and the only reason that they can get elected is that the prevalence of bullshit and the amount of money that rich people put into their coffers so that they can get elected, because they just run ad after ad after ad after ad to confuse the people. And so with a poor education system that doesn't really affect how people learn, go back to many previous podcasts that we've discussed that, with a bunch of money
I wasn't
to convince
taught
people.
how any of this shit works, so thank you for telling me, but
it's just,
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And then this is the income tax, but like education is paid through a different system, not the income tax.
Yeah, I know, but
they were even going to cut out the tax credit that allows teachers to buy supplies. That's how fucking greedy these people are. Let's give corporations gigantic tax credits, but $250 for teachers to get exempt from buying supplies on their own? Fuck that.
No, it's well, okay. Well, my question was that I thought of a while ago is that so the Republicans, or a few Republicans, have proposed this tax plan. Do the Democrats have any? And we have a two-party political system. So do the Democrats have a counter tax plan, or have they proposed anything else? And I'm sorry, I don't follow politics because I also have to research a lot of things that aren't really related to it. So I end up, and I like to play video games too much, so I don't have that much time to read up on all this stuff. So that's why, thank God you're there and you read all this stuff for me. So that's why I'm asking, do the Democrats have a counter to this, or are they just sitting there? Not that they are supposed to have a counter or anything. I don't even know. Or are they just sitting there waiting to vote against this tax plan?
Well, here's the thing. The way that the legislature works is that the people who are in power decide how things work. So the Democrats at this point can have their ideas of what to do. For instance, not cutting corporate tax rates, or cutting, or making the tax brackets into 4 instead of 7. You know, the idea behind it all is that Democrats at this point are only able to negotiate as much as they can to oppose what these things are.
Right.
So some things like fetuses being able to be the beneficiaries of estates, I guarantee you there are a bunch of Democrats who are like, that's not feasible. Things like that. So, but in terms of the democratic ideas and democratic plans, there's not truly you can't say that there's a democratic tax bill because they're not in power. They can't do it.
Right. Yeah. So it has to go back. Sorry.
Yeah, they can only negotiate as much as their bargaining power allows. And because of the brilliancy of the Republican Party in this past election and the missteps or whatever of the Democratic Party, we gave up the Senate, we gave up the White House, and representatives is governed by a lot of state legislatures, which the Democratic Party has let slip for too long and allowed for strict gerrymandering to happen. So gerrymandering is a way in which the Republicans at the state level are able to break up the counties and voting.
They draw the voting lines.
Exactly, in ways that benefit Republican candidates. So that's why we have more more conservative Republicans and more, we might say, more liberal Democrats, but I would say that there's a lot more centrist Democrats than liberal Democrats. In any case, getting out of the weeds here, the Democrats are only there to negotiate so far as they can to make sure that the middle class doesn't get squeezed out.
Right. Oh, again, yeah, we haven't even talked about the middle class. How... So the middle class is getting screwed the most because they're going to end up having to pay the most taxes out of if this tax plan is passed. If I'm in a general sense, right? That's it's just that many of the things that the middle class was able to benefit from will change in distinct ways with this tax plan, either through tax credits being taken away so that they can be applied elsewhere, or through taxes being leveled in different ways in order for the balancing act to work out. So they would see... The idea is that over the course of 10 years.
Over the course of 10 years, $1 trillion in debt, based on how the tax plan will work out, will be unfairly planted onto the middle and lower classes. So the middle class is just going to be squeezed out in terms of a lot of the tax credits that they benefited from previously being eliminated at various stages, and reappropriating those tax credits to the wealthy. So we're going to see the middle class kind of being squeezed out of the ability to get up. So really, low income is down here with very little ability to move up in terms of wealth. And the middle class was like here. Now it's going to be squeezed out to here. And then we have this wide thing. It's going to look like an old school champagne glass, in terms of wealth distribution.
Right.
It's a really unfortunate thing in terms of like people who, well, let's say the house plan with the old house plan, in terms of people who are going to graduate school being the tax exemption for tuition remission, right? So that's really a big thing for a lot of middle class families, right? You go through college, okay, Then you go to grad school, which is increasingly important in this
sometimes
economy, with the specialization in a lot of different things.
Oh yeah. You're telling me.
Exactly. And then you get that middle class, which are a lot of the people who don't have the capital to just, with daddy's money, invest into different corporations and never work for anybody but themselves. Trump. But they have to go to graduate school in order to learn something, so that when that guy fucks up, they are there to save his ass.
Right. Did I think you're actually, this is pretty much not related, but I think you're more marketable now with a master's degree than with a PhD. I've been looking in, because I might graduate by the end of next year. So I've been trying to look into jobs, and it looks like it's going to be much more difficult for me to get a job than, for instance, someone with a master's in chemistry.
Ironic, isn't it? It's just because
very ironic.
People with PhDs, they don't want to pay them that much.
Yeah, well, look, I'll take any fucking pay. It's more money than I make now, but maybe not with taxes. But yeah, so the middle class is going to, in 10 years, if this gets passed, we're going to see more of the middle class get bumped down to a lower tax bracket, essentially, right? People are going to...
They're just going to have to incur more and more.
Probably.
No, it's not the tax bracket idea. It's the idea that with the increasing debt, it'll be more difficult for opportunities to arise. It'll be more difficult for startup businesses to start. Okay. The credit will be much more difficult to be had, etc. So then, the more debt you have at this level, it's just like the more difficult it will be to operate within the economic schematic. So the only people able to operate within that schematic would be the people who are well established already.
Similar to how YouTube works right now.
Yeah. You have a million views, and then you're set.
Yeah. The most views are given to the people at the top, and not that they don't deserve those views by any means, but it's very difficult, for instance, for us to, with 24 subscribers, and we get maybe 10 views per video. That's great for us. We're really happy when we get 10 views per video, because we put all the time into this video. I mean, we spend maybe an hour a week recording this shit, and then we have to edit it, and this is sort of just analogous is what I have to analog. This is my analog to it, even though it's going to be affecting me, obviously, financially. But yeah, so we spend all this time and we can't go anywhere. That's what you're saying, right? It's going to be difficult to grow financially as someone in the middle class, and especially in lower class in America. It's going to be very difficult to become more wealthy, for instance,
and more wealthy or maintain wealth. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Okay. It's if you're in the middle section, they say that this plan will put $4,000 right in your pocket, right? That's what the idea is, but that's not.
Trump also said $2,000, but whatever.
Whatever it is, $2,000 right in your pocket. But it doesn't work that way.
Great, that's so much money.
It doesn't work that way, and it's never going to work that way. And you have to be, people have to be realistic about what this means. And it's just a lot of rhetoric and a lot of people talking to say that this benefit will come straight for the middle class. And I don't think a lot of people believe that, honestly, with the idea of what's been passed around in terms of what both those bills and now the put together bill, who there will be targeting. I think it's pretty open in terms of debate on who this tax bill is based on and who this tax bill is for. Whatever rhetoric is said for it being the middle class, that's bullshit. And I think a lot of people are seeing through that. And I think a lot of people who wanted this administration to help them are seeing a lot of times that isn't necessarily true. Now, there's that small part of the base that will never move for the Republicans, and Donald Trump has them eating out of his palm.
By the balls.
Right.
Yeah.
But it will be increasingly difficult for them in the coming years, since everything that has been enacted under the Trump presidency is against their ability to function in society or increase their status in society.
Okay. Well, that's real depressing.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And we're recording on the 13th, and we expect the net neutrality to go down in flames tomorrow. So this is a real
if Reddit's any indicator,
bad 3 weeks.
It should. Well, hold on. I think there's been a lot of on the internet, there's been a lot of people who definitely contacted their senators. I know I did, about net neutrality. So I hope to our future hungover gaming boys, I hope we can still upload videos. But is there anything else you wanted to cover in particular with this tax plan? I know it's 500 pages, so there's no way we could cover it all. But
yeah, I mean, the way in which it was passed is terrible. It's not realistic to add and add and add and add. Give no one any time and then pass it through and consider, oh, that's a great bill we just passed, and they're just claiming this is an ornery thing of a weak party who doesn't have power, and every single time a party in power passes something, the party that's not in power talks about process, and that's it's bullshit, really. This is the biggest wealth grab possible. Talk about wealth redistribution. This is it. This is wealth redistribution for the wealthy. And this is a really sad state of affairs that the Republicans, who are only in league for their donors and being able to be reelected, are in. And it's surprising that people who supposedly had morality and had talent and had the ability to discern between something that was necessary and something that is evil weren't able to hold themselves. And I congratulate Bob Corker on voting against it initially.
Well, so do you know the exact date that the Senate still has to pass this bill, though,
So I think both the House and the Senate have to now pass this.
And then if the Senate doesn't pass it, that means they're going to go back to the drawing board, change maybe one or two lines, and then try again, right? That's essentially the general process, right?
The process, yeah.
And then it'll probably does it have to go back to the House if the Senate doesn't pass it?
I don't. If it gets rejected in the Senate and it has to go through another process of changes, then it has to be voted on again in the House and the Senate.
Okay. So more likely than not, because they're already one of the steps towards getting this passed, it's probably not going to get we're probably not going to see that many changes to it when it eventually gets passed.
So there were a bunch of changes that happened tonight when it got put together. Yeah. So we should keep an eye out on what those official changes are in the next coming days, with analysis coming from news sites, 538, things like that. We've gone through some of what the initial things are here for what we could, piece together from reports from the New York Times. I've read New York Times, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, although I flippin' hate CNN increasingly. The Washington Post. So I've gathered through a bunch of, different sources, but we'll see how that actually comes together. And so over the next few days, we'll be keeping track of what that put together bill took from each of the House and the Senate, and then Schumer is attempting to wait for the new year and waiting for Doug Jones to be seated before the vote comes in. But we'll see probably a vote coming next week. Now there are a couple Republicans who have who were given promises but could be holdouts in the coming week. So it's possible that it won't pass. But I think that if everything got put together within Republican conference and then within the bipartisan conference, that everything was put together in a way that made sure that they had maintained their majority and were able to pass it. Wow. So I think that we will most likely see this horrid tax plan that is going to defund the middle class past next week. Oop.
Great. So that's fantastic. Luckily, we're already in grad school, made it out of, and hopefully we'll get out of our education and get jobs. I feel like a lot of people who are in school are just coming up and maybe going to get jobs in the next couple of years are going to be dealing with this for a long time. And of course, we'll be dealing with it as well. But I hope that it doesn't get passed, obviously.
Yeah.
And I really hope everyone is safe out there, gets their health care, and is all right, you know. Times suck. These times suck.
Yep.
But I hope our videos could bring a smile to your face. Maybe not this one, but upcoming videos, for instance. Yvonne have published a video, hopefully this Friday, the Friday before this came out, and I hope you guys go ahead and check it out because we've got some cool things coming out for you guys. And, you know, Yvonne, if anyone has any questions for us, or for you specifically about this tax plan, tweet at us at Gaming Hungover. I'm sure Yvonne would be happy to answer any of them in 240 characters or less, because now you can do that.
Whoa.
I know, big moves in Twitter. Yeah. Well, hey, I also have to say that this podcast ends in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is where you, the listener or viewer, can send in your music, perhaps to cheer us up about this tax plan, depending on the timbre in your voice or the or the tone of the song. Maybe write a song about this tax plan. Jesus Christ. I hope you guys can send in some of your music at gaminghungover@gmail.com. We'd love to play it for the audience and send people your way to get you guys the clicks. But, of course, when no one sends in a song, I get to pick a song unless Yvonne has one on the spot right now.
I'm too sad.
Well, I'll tell you, there's something to be happy about. Capcom is making a fucking comeback with Mega Man 11, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, motherfucking Monster Hunter Worlds, and all this new shit coming out. I'm very excited Capcom's decided to actually put some production value into their games. Street Fighter V Arcade Edition is coming out next year, and wouldn't it be just an amazing thing if classic characters came to the game, such as Sagat, Sakura, Cody, Blanca? They're coming, Yvonne, and I've actually not been excited about Street Fighter V in a very, very long time until they announced this shit. I'm super excited. Sagat is one of the coolest characters in the Street Fighter universe, so we're going to be playing his theme from Street Fighter 2. He is epic. He fights with Muay Thai. Isn't that badass? He's bald.
That is badass.
He's got this badass scar on his... He has an eye patch. He's really cool. But yeah, I'm super excited for Arcade Edition. Hope you guys check out Street Fighter V next year. Don't play it now. It's not worth playing. I'm kidding. Maybe play it now to get used to the... So you're prepared for Season 3. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. And subscribe to us if you like us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. Really helps with our visibility, obviously. And I hope you guys enjoy the song as well. I'm Julien.
I'm Yvonne. Bye.
Peace out.